first. That title, honorable, belongs to somebody much more special than me. So while I appreciate my brother, I am certainly honored to be here in your presence. First and foremost, you should know that this process began with a small organizing effort that started right in that little room.
That's right, that's right.
In fact, it may have most effectively started when we had a small meeting with our council person at Arroyo Viejo Park in East Oakland, Sister Desley Brooks, and we began to chop it up as we always do over issues that are affecting the lives of our people. I told her a few things, she told me a few things, and the next morning, Brother Christopher called me, having learned what happened by the television news, as many of us did, and livid with anger, asked, what are we going to do about this? We talked a little further, and he said, we need to call those elected officials that we've been meeting with for every other issues in the city of Oakland to the table right here, right now. Talked about whether or not schedules would meet, and as my brother said, and we agreed, this is an emergency.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe many of you had other things you had planned to do on a Saturday afternoon, early evening. But this is an emergency.
Right. Right.
For when we saw our brother gunned down, executed on a BART train station,
Right.
then that was not something that required a wait. And while I understand our brother in his dialogue with us about the importance for a prosecutor to have a good case, I still have the question that if I shot somebody on television and they knew who I was and where I lived, and they knew where I like to drink coffee and where I go to worship, I'm sure that there'd be a law enforcement officer at my door. In fact, if you know me, he'll be at your door. So we must organize. Before we speak any further, I want to thank all of those that have spoken before me. I want to bring before us a young man that's been seen on the television news that has given credit to his name for starting what was called a riot. Now, I'd like my brother Mandingo to come on up here with me. For a few moments, we want to stand like defense attorneys.
Come on.
First and foremost, when we saw our young people lash out in anger, the question immediately becomes, why did they lash out? Now, I'm not saying that Brother Mandingo did lash out.
That's right.
We know that there's some who did. Why did they lash out? Did they think, when they watched the television news and they saw or heard no one from political office, and when they saw or heard no one from BART authority, when they saw or heard no one from the leadership class stand up and say anything, the silence was deafening. Now, if I were under threat and there were forces who were supposed to protect my life and I'm being beaten and they do nothing, that is not the time for any of us to start getting so holy. Now, while we've agreed not to cuss in this fine church, trust me, in the midst of a fight, some of us will cuss. And none of us are qualified to be overtly judgmental of those that are cussing while they're in the fight. Well, I don't know the details of what happened that day, but I was at BART Station, invited by my sister who stands by my side, Sister Derica. And we surely are not the district attorney. In fact, maybe one of you should be. And is charging our youth as though they are criminals. Part of the reason that officer took so swiftly shoot down our little brother Oscar Grant is because on sight by many in law enforcement we are considered criminals. So before we start criminalizing everyone that protested, I stood with Mayor Dellums as he talked to some of those protesters, and they were angry, and they had a right to be angry. Some didn't want to hear him, because when you get to that point in time, trust me, every one of us has a point where there ain't no talk. And we really want to be clear about that before we begin to judge our young people. So can we encourage and thank